What's up, CCC students? So excited to have everybody back for another Genesis Mosaic Live. As you are joining the call, feel free to let us know your name and what campus you're checking in from. We want to hear from you. My name is Josh. I'm on staff at St. Charles campus. I'm high school pastor there, and I'm hanging out with James from DeKalb and Marcilyn, our middle school pastor in St. Charles. I got Pastor Jus from Streamwood and Pastor Gus from Aurora. They are not brothers, despite the fact that their names sound exactly the same. But we're pretty pumped to be here with you guys. Hope you are enjoying your Wednesday. Enjoy some warmer weather, even though it was rainy. I guess that's kind of a bummer. But again, YouTube Live rules for you. No spamming in the comments, and don't be a troll. Meaning, be nice and don't overwhelm people with the chat, right? We do want to hear from you, but we want to make sure that we're keeping that chat on point. If the chat happens to begin to bother you, you are welcome to go to theater mode, in which you can silence the chat feature and it will no longer be scrolling through your screen. We're going to put that reminder in the comments section throughout our night, just as a reminder for you guys, but you want to make sure that if that bothers you, you turn it off, right? That's important. We have an engagement question for you this week to help everybody kind of get into the room and enjoy their time here tonight. Our question is this: if you could add one person to your quarantine house, who would it be? Give us their name and like who they are to you in the chat. So like if it's like your great aunt Bernice, like we don't know who Bernice is, you got to tell us she's a great aunt. If you give us an actor or an actress or something like that, we're gonna know who they are. But give us the name of the person you would add to your quarantine house if you could. Pastors, I want to hear from you. Pastor James, who are you adding to your quarantine house?
Isn't it obvious, from Pride Rock?
Well done.
Oh my gosh.
Who else?
No, that's a good question. I would probably add, I think I would probably add some athlete that I look up to. Maybe Christian Yelich from the Brewers. I think he'd be fun to hang out with, play catch with in the backyard. That'd be fun.
I see you, Steve Gallagher. Thanks for adding me to your quarantine house. I love you too, Coach.
Does it have to be a person?
Or Gus, go ahead. No, it doesn't have to be a person. You would add an inanimate object or
No. So I was on my walk, my daily walk, to try to not go crazy, and I saw the cutest little labradoodle dog. It was like a little puppy.
Oh my God.
It was so tiny. It was beautiful. I was like, so if I could add that little doggy to my life, I think I would be most happy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Rachel Blahnik still wants peach rings. She must have crushed the ones that you sent her.
Call me peach rings. She loves them.
They should have rationed them throughout the quarantine.
Oh, man. Bummer. Marcilyn, who would you add to your quarantine house?
Yeah, I'm a little stuck on this one. My first go-to is like my best friend, right? I haven't seen her in months. I miss her. We do tons of fun stuff together. So that would be my first go-to. But then I was thinking like, okay, but like to be strategic, you'd want somebody that would come to like make life fun or motivate you to do the things you don't want to do. So I'd want somebody who's like, kind of like James, like somebody who's like a super buff fitness person that would come and like make me motivated
like
to
The
work
Rock?
out all the time. Yeah, maybe I'd want to live with The Rock. I mean, I guess if he sang a lot of songs, then I'd be more okay with it, but I don't know. I think I'm going to stick with my best friend.
Doesn't Michelle Medrick work at a gym? You could just call her up and
It's true.
and she could.
You know
she
what?
could run
I'll
you through a
just
workout.
have Michelle come live with me for a while.
There you go. Pastor
My house
Jess,
works
who
for the
lives in your
same
house?
gym, but it's fine.
Oh well. I guess just use
someone
John.
asked to
Oh my God.
sci-fi characters count.
Sure, why not?
Why
Can't
not?
add anybody to your house anyways against the rules right now. So whatever. Pastor Jess, who you adding?
You already know. LeBron James. All day.
LeBron James.
Okay.
LeBron James. Bron.
Tuesday.
He's a good babysitter, so that'd be a good addition for you and Crystal right now. Watch your kiddo. That's good. That's good.
It would be.
Awesome. Well, yeah, if you could add one person to your quarantine house, who would it be? Go ahead and let us know who that is in the chat section. But we promised you last week when we played our game that we would draw a winner at random and you would find out today. if you won last week's game. And so we put your names into a randomizer, a little wheel of names, and we're going to play it now. And if your name comes up, you won, and you need to reach out to us and let us know who you are so that we can get you your prize. So without further ado, let's spin the wheel. Best I got. And Grant.
Way to go, Grant.
Well done, my man. Your name was in the drawing because you answered one of the questions right first last week. And so at random, your name has been drawn. You are the winner. Well done, Grant. We're going to be playing another game at the end of today and are live, and you have another chance to win. Grant, you could win 2 times in a row. That's possible. That's possible. But we do have some content for you tonight as well. And we're going to be talking about something that's kind of important tonight. And we got a lot of questions about it. I was actually surprised at the number of questions that we got from students related to this topic. And the topic is dating and relationships. Dating and relationships. Now, I realize that for some people, their automatic response is, I'm logging out. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a girlfriend. Like, I don't even want to date at all.
Cooties, you know?
Cooties, exactly. Nobody wants cooties. And I recognize that is some people. They don't have a dating relationship right now, and that's okay. In fact, that might be for the best. But we think that it's really important for us to have a biblical worldview for something that's as prevalent as dating in our society, because there's a high probability that you might go on a date at some point in your life. There's also a probability that you're going to know somebody who has a dating relationship in your life. And it's really important for us to make sure that we have a biblical worldview and we understand what does God have to say about this topic. And so we took a number of your questions and kind of shrunk them down into about 3 or 4 that we're going to navigate tonight. Pastor Marcilyn and Pastor Gus are going to chime into this most primarily. But Pastor James and Pastor Jus will be rocking the comments and interacting with you guys that way. And so we're excited to jump in together and navigate this. And so right off the very bat, when is it okay for us to date? That's a question. When is it okay for me to date? How old do I have to be? When am I allowed to date? That was like one of the very first questions that we got. And so Pastor Marcilyn, answer this question for everyone. When is it okay for everyone to date?
Never. No, I'm just kidding.
Right, because there's just one right answer, right, that we could just say for everybody, and it's a magical number that before that is bad and after that is good, right? That's how that works. I think there's so many factors that play into this question. I think there's a lot of things that we have to think through to answer this question. I think if you guys are waiting for a specific number, you're not going to get it from anybody. I don't think the number is what is the qualifying thing here. I think there's a lot of different kind of steps or check marks that you can have in place to kind of evaluate yourself and your beliefs before you make a decision about whether or not you're ready to date. And so I think Gus and I are just going to kind of talk about some of those things of, rather than the focus on the number of like, okay, once I turn this age, we're going to talk more about what should your maturity level be, where should your faith be at, and how should you be evaluating yourself and whether or not you're ready to enter into a relationship. And so right off the bat, I would say one of the things that you need to think about is, are you pursuing Jesus well in regard to entering into this relationship? And so that means when you think about this person, when you think about your interactions with this person, are you becoming more like Jesus? Are you acting more like Jesus? Are you doing the things that God calls you to do? I think that that's a really important question to ask. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And I think that that's something that applies, like this verse says, to every area of our life. And so when you're thinking about getting into a dating relationship, is your life and all that you do for the glory of God? And then something that I've just learned a lot in relationships that I don't think I fully grasped before entering into a relationship was self-sacrifice and the role that God says, put others' needs before yourself. And so that's another thing of, that's a hard thing. It's not like something to boast in and be like, yeah, look at me go. Like, that is a hard thing that you have to fight for. And to be honest, it's not really fun. Like, nobody wants, like, I'm going to put my needs aside for the needs of others. But I think before you can ever think about entering into a relationship, you have to be in a space where you can say, I care enough about this person that I'm willing to set aside my own wants in order to care for someone else. And so that's just a start. Two things that would come to my head when I would think about evaluating myself and whether or not I'm ready to enter into a relationship.
That's good.
That's good.
That's good. What do you think, Pastor Gus? When is it okay for us to date?
Well, I have some pretty strong views on young people dating. And I don't mean that because I'm the person who wants to take the fun away, but more of, I've seen a lot of things go bad really quick when young people date without the proper understanding of what they're getting into. I've seen young lives be in a really tough situation where they're having to make tough decisions because of this relationship. I've also seen a lot of heartbreak where you think that this person is going to be there for the rest of their life, and all of a sudden the relationship that you once thought was so wonderful all of a sudden comes crumbling down.
Sure.
And so there's been drama that I've witnessed. There's been real life situations that I've seen, and there's been true families that are hurt because of this. And so I think that like Marcilyn said, that sometimes we don't have all of the right answers, but we definitely want to explore the conversation as best as we can and try to put some meat on the bone for you guys on that.
Yeah, that's good. I think one thing off the bat too, I think we owe it to all of our students to remind them of is that Scripture is really clear that as young people, especially, but as children, we have a responsibility to honor mom and dad, right? And so a significant voice in this conversation is, what do your mom and dad say? So moms and dads, we've got your back. We are on team mom and dad. And so this is a conversation, students, that you need to make sure you're having with your parents. They love you, and they most often know what is best for you. And I can say that now. I wouldn't have said that when I was your age, students, but I can say that now looking back on all the wisdom that my parents gave me when I was growing up. So I want to encourage you to make sure you're honoring mom and dad and getting their thoughts on this topic as well. But a few things, just to kind of recap what these two have said before we kind of jump into another one of your questions, right? Do everything you do for the glory of God. Even in your dating relationships, you've got to be committed to glorifying Jesus. Somebody asked the question, what does it look like to be in a holy relationship? Talk about holiness last week, becoming more and more like Christ, right? That process of sanctification. So in our dating relationships, to contribute to becoming more and more like Christ as well. Do you understand self-sacrifice, right? And have you identified the purpose of this relationship? What's the purpose of engaging in a dating relationship like this? So just a handful of things for you to consider before you go, hey, I'm ready to date, right? So there's not a magic number, there's not a magic age, but there's some questions for you to be asking yourself before you jump into those. Any final thoughts about that question before we jump on to the next one?
Yeah, I think I would add maybe one other thing, and that's just understanding where your identity is rooted, because I think it's so easy when we desire to enter into a relationship and we like this person, or we might even love this person, to kind of make that relationship key to our identity. And that's something that's really easy to do. And so we have to just be aware of it to make sure that we fight against it, because our identity should ultimately be as a child of God, and our relationship with Jesus kind of ties in with pursuing God. But it's important to know that you need to make sure that your identity or your status or how you view yourself is not through this relationship, because that's just a dangerous pitfall that I know I've fallen into. And I think some of our students have been there and would say the same thing.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Another question that we got was related to other relationships, like friendships or family outside of a dating relationship. What's the role of maybe someone's parents in a dating relationship? What's the role of other friends in my life, in my dating relationship? So what's the role of other people in contributing to or influencing or helping to shape the dating relationship that I might already be in or that I'm even pursuing? So Gus, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think, obviously the role of mom and dad or a guardian is going to be super important, right? As to what are their thoughts on you going out there and engaging in dating. I think that's going to be really important. I think it can also, if you are dating already, the people who come in, they can be helpful in identifying some things that may be going wrong in the relationship, or that some red flags, if you will. Like they can kind of speak into that. Sometimes I've seen it firsthand. Like two young people get together to start relating with each other, and all of a sudden there's just always drama. They're always fighting, and as a friend, you can kind of see that from the outside looking in, and say, hey, you guys are always fighting. You sure you're meant to be together at this point? It shouldn't be this hard, right? It's this sort of thing. So people outside can really provide some good feedback.
That's good.
Yeah. Things that I would say is I think our tendency in relationships is sometimes to let, once again, our identity become in that relationship, and we forget that there's two people in that relationship, right? Like it's not just me as a girlfriend or me interacting. And I think sometimes we tend to think our relationship is only about us or how we're viewed. And so one of the important things that I think is, yes, we need feedback, and we need our friends speaking into our relationship. We need our parents, we need pastors and small group leaders and all those people speaking into them. And then it's on us to bring that feedback back to the person that we're in a relationship with and say, hey, here's what I'm hearing, here's what I'm seeing. Because I think that is something that we do for whatever reason, where we hear these things and we try and control our relationship, and we control the person that we're in a relationship with, rather than saying, hey, this is you and me together pursuing a holy life that God has called us to. How can we be the best that we can individually and together? And so that's an important thing too, because I think if any of you guys have been in a dating relationship before, you get feedback from your friends, from your parents, from people that care about you. And it's up to you to decide what to do with that. But I think if we're talking about being holy, if we're talking about being refined by Christ and doing things to pursue him, it means taking that feedback and then working with that person you're in a relationship with to communicate really well, because that's how you are in healthy relationships, and then move forward with that there. So that's an important aspect, I would say, too.
Yeah, no, that's good. So the role of our friends and the role of our parents might be to be that third party person, right? To kind of go, hey, I see this, right, in your relationship. Hey, I really want to celebrate. Maybe they want to acknowledge something you're doing really well in that relationship. Or the other side of that, hey, there's a space for you to grow. And those friends, those family members oftentimes have a vantage point that we might not have, right? And then, Marcilyn, I love that encouragement to talk out those things within your dating relationship, right? And I got to admit, that wasn't something I did super well in my dating relationships, but I see the benefit of that in my own marriage. There's times when my wife and I can come together and say, hey, I've noticed this is an area where I feel like I'm falling short, or somebody pointed this out in our relationship. Can we navigate that together, right? And I think that's really important, which means it's important to have somebody that you're dating that has those same values that you do, right? Wants to grow in those ways alongside of you. And so I think that's where it becomes really important for us to consider when we ask ourselves some of those kind of questions we just talked about, like, am I following Jesus well? Do I know where my identity is at? Do I know the purpose of this relationship? It might be worth asking that other person in the relationship what their thoughts are on that as well, to kind of see how are you guys kind of jiving. Do you have a common kind of values that are driving that relationship? I think can be really important.
Yeah, that's good.
We had another question that was really similar to that, but it's a little bit different. I think it's important. And the question was, how do you balance other friendships while also in a dating relationship? Somebody kind of made the point that you can become really easy to become infatuated. They use that word, which I was really impressed with. Become infatuated with the person that you're dating, and then all of your friendships might suffer as a result. And so really, Marcilyn, I think you got an input for this one, but I want to hear from you students as well. Maybe you are somebody who has been on the receiving end of being maybe hurt, like a friendship kind of dissolved or was broken because somebody started dating somebody and they left you in the dust, right? Or maybe you've recognized that you played that role and you started neglecting some friendships when you started dating. And so students, how do you go about balancing really healthy and good friendships while you might be also in a dating relationship? But Pastor Marcilyn, I want to hear from you as well.
Yeah, so I hear this from you students, my Genesis people out in St. Charles, a lot of their situations where you enter into a relationship and it's great for a little while, but then you begin to see that your friendship circles change, whether that's because you're only spending time with your significant other and your friends are like, hey, this isn't cool, you're not hanging out with me, and they kind of bail. Or you have friends who start dating somebody and they just kind of disappear because now they are infatuated or obsessed with this new relationship. And So I've seen this hurt play out, and I've seen the struggle of you guys. And man, I don't know how to be a good significant other and a good friend at the same time. And so how does that work? And I understand that struggle, but I think honestly, guys, you just have to make sure that you're really intentional with your relationships. You can't bail on those relationships that you had prior to entering into a significant other relationship, especially because, like we just talked about, you need those people speaking into your relationship. So now is not the time to neglect them or bail on them. It's time to pour in, to be intentional, to invite them into that relationship. And if you're on that receiving end, if your friend bailed on you, I think it's really important to go and speak truth and say, hey, you know what? I've seen this in your life, and I'm going to challenge you to be intentional to invest in healthy relationships outside of this dynamic. And you guys know that, and I think you know that, but I would love to see you guys as you meet your groups this week to talk about that, because I'm sure lots of you have been in that situation. And so remember that question, how do you balance relationships and friendships throughout how you interact, and what is a healthy balance between those two things, whether you're on the receiving end or you're in the relationship.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Hey, I want to throw a curveball. This wasn't on our questions, but it came up in the chat that I think is really important. And so it doesn't matter who wants to answer it, anybody. But there was a question about is it okay to date somebody? They use the word sacrilegious, but I'll just maybe even broaden that a little bit and say someone who's not a Christian. So if you are a believer, if you love Jesus, is it okay to date someone who doesn't share that same love for Jesus? When do you guys want to take a swing at that?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, Gus, go for it.
The Bible tells us, right, that let me, before I even get into that, I think one of the things is that you need to ask yourself is, will this relationship be Christ-centered, right?
Yeah.
Is it going to, and so obviously when someone doesn't share the same beliefs as you, then already you're not matched up the right way. And so your ideas and what you do on a Sunday, on a Wednesday, are completely different than someone who is not sharing that. So that in itself would, the Bible says, do not be unequally yoked, right, in that sense. And what they meant by that is that, when they did the gardening back then, they had two cattle, and they put this yoke, this literally thing, and if one was taller than the other, they would not be able to do their work the right way. And so whenever you are unequally yoked, things won't flow the right way. And so I think that's important, to keep Jesus at the center of all of our relationships. Yeah. And if you are going to engage in that, that would be my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think it brings us right back to that first point of entering into a relationship. That means you're pursuing Jesus with all that you have, and so are they, so that you can make sure that both of you are honoring God together. And it's hard to do that if the other person doesn't have that same value in life. You can't both pursue Jesus if that's not what one person wants.
Yeah.
And I've also heard that I'm trying to win them for Jesus side. Like, if I date this person, they're going to come with me to church. I've seen that backfire so many times. So never.
That's good. That's good. I want to ask go ahead, James.
So I was going to say, I think of a simple analogy. Like if I'm going on a walk with somebody, right, and we're walking in the same direction, we're going to be together the whole time, right? But if somebody and me are walking in different directions, even ever so slightly, it's going to continue to separate, right? And so if you're dating somebody who's not upholding the same values, who isn't seeking after Christ the way that you are, even if at the beginning doesn't seem like that big of a difference or a deal, the closer you grow to Jesus, or the closer you grow to them, is either going to take you away from Jesus or away from them because of your values. And so I just think that is something to be aware of, is that right now it might not feel like that big of a difference or a deal, but I think eventually it shows itself, and it's hard, it's difficult.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I want to ask our next question comments in here. I think we're just kind of joking, but they're like, hey, we're on lockdown and we're talking about dating. Like that feels kind of silly. I can't actually go on dates. Which one is true? Yes, we cannot go out on dates. In fact, my wife and I have had to have some stay-at-home date nights that have been pretty good, but we can't go anywhere. But I want to encourage you guys with this. I'm going to use, I know some of you guys are going to hate this, and I apologize, but I'm going to use a sporting analogy real quick and then move on to the next part, right? A lot of athletes will train for the season in the off season. And so they will prepare to play the game before it's ever time to play the game. And so I think it's important for us to consider this. And I know Marcilyn's cringing right now. I totally get that. I can't think of a better one to use, right? But sometimes it's important for us to prepare for experiences and for opportunities before those experiences ever come. And so right now, might be the very best time for us to have this conversation, to think about, to pray about, to open our Bible and see what God has to say about this before we ever even enter into a dating relationship or before we go back to being out of quarantine and we can go on dates again. So I know it seems kind of silly, but I think this is kind of that preparation stage for us right now to talk about a topic that's going to be really prevalent in our lives, hopefully soon when this quarantine is lifted, but certainly at some point. So last question.
Can I add one note to that, Josh? I think too, yes, you guys aren't physically seeing each other, but so much of your relationships are done via text messaging or chatting or whatever. And so, yes, I understand your snarkiness about not physically being together, but I know that you guys are still interacting. Like if you have a significant other, it's not like you're not interacting with them right now. And so whether you're physically together or not, those interactions matter. And so even if you're not dating, think about the types of ways that you talk to people and the types of things that you say, because everything we're talking about right now still applies to that. If we're thinking about talking to anybody, literally anybody, we want to make sure that the things that we do are honoring to the Lord and pursuing Him. And so whether it's an actual significant other, whether it's just your best friend, whether it's somebody that you want to be a significant other, you're still in contact with them. The things you say still matter. The motivations of your heart, the thoughts in your mind, all those things are still there, even if you're not physically present with them.
Yeah, that's good. All right, the last question we got, we spent a little bit of time on that, which is okay. But the last question we got goes like this. The Bible only talks about not having sex before marriage. But how do we apply the Bible to dating in a culture where making out is okay? And so this is kind of a long question, and there's some pieces that I think we need to correct a little bit. But there's also a legitimate question here, which I think is a good one to ask. So it's, again, the Bible only talks about not having sex before marriage. Meaning that that's the line that the Bible draws as far as boundaries go. So how do we apply the Bible to dating relationships in a culture where making out is okay? Pastor Gus, Pastor Marcilyn, who wants to take the first swing at this?
I'll go.
All right.
I think Jesus was very clear on a couple of things. One, he always drove at the intent of your heart. Right. And he says, if you look at a woman lustfully or a guy lustfully, then you have already committed sin in your heart. Right. And so when we talk about physical touch, right, when physically making out, that lust level is sky high. Right. It went past just looking at someone and having a lustful thought. It's actually acting out on that. So that right there, just on the words of Jesus, you got some things that you need to worry about. The other thing, I think that God has created in a covenant relationship of marriage for sex to be an intimate and a good thing, right? And unfortunately, the world has made it a frivolous, anything can go type of thing, and it's downplayed and it's been made to feel bad and shameful, but it's not. It's supposed to be enjoyed between, in a marriage covenant relationship. And so even though the Bible doesn't talk about, specifically about making out and how that's bad, it still gives us some pretty good ideas of lust and how our emotions can run high on that. And so I think it's very, if you claim to be follower of Jesus Christ, and Jesus said this, and so it falls on us to kind of follow those guidelines.
That's good.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things here, right? Like when I heard this question, it just brought me back to that very first point we made with the first question of do everything to honor God, do everything in pursuit of who Jesus is. And so when we think with that lens, it kind of changes everything. It's not a question of what can I do or what can I get away with. It changes into how can I pursue being more like the character of God. And so I think, sure, the culture says a lot of things that are okay that we see reflected in scripture, a lot of different things that says God is calling us to something more. We talked about this before we went into shelter in place. We talked about holiness and how God came to give us life to the fullest. And so God is actually calling us to not conform to the world. Romans 12:2 says, don't conform to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And so I think that that question is just in the wrong frame. Like, okay, it's not a matter of how far can I go? It's how can I go against the grain of the culture? Because I know that by being set apart, being not like the culture, God is actually calling me into something good, a best kind of life.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think helps shift that perspective. And I think that, yeah, it's all about what are you doing physically that is honoring to God. Something that was just kind of, this might be super cheesy to some people, but I know for me was just a helpful thing in my relationships was if Jesus incarnate were to step into my setting at any point in time, would my thoughts, my words, my actions be honoring to him? And so that was just something that was always kind of helpful for me to think back on is what I'm doing, thinking, or saying honoring to God, because ultimately that's what our goal is. And so you can answer that in no matter what kind of setting you're in.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's important for us to remember, to that, and Gus, you kind of alluded to this, that the biblical boundary is not drawn at the extreme of sex, right? Jesus makes it really clear in Matthew chapter 5 in the Sermon on the Mount. He says, you heard it said, do not commit adultery, meaning don't have sex with somebody who you're not married to, right? But Jesus says, if you even think about someone lustfully, you've already done that in your heart, right? And so at the basis of the question, like, is making out okay, really is what's going on in your thought life when that's happening, right? And if you are having lustful thoughts about this person, then you need to draw that line much further away from making out than you might already be. And I think sometimes there's that question of like, how far can I go? Like, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this okay? Trying to get as close to that line as we possibly can. And I think really, and I see some of the comments coming through affirming this, which I think is great, that our desire as Christ followers should be to live as close to holiness as we can, as close to Jesus as we can, not as close to the line of permission as we can, right? And so I think it's important, right, that Jesus says, have a holy thought life, right? Not just don't have sex, right? But make sure your thoughts are also glorifying to God. And so I think it's a really important thing for us to consider as we try to live, even in our dating relationships, for the glory of God, so that all that we do is for his glory. And so this is good content, you guys. Great questions. Thank you guys for submitting those. You guys are going to continue this conversation in your groups later tonight or later this week. As a reminder, if you haven't gotten a Zoom link or a Google Hangout link from your small group leader, shoot them a text or give them a call right now and say, hey, I want to have a group this week. What's up? And so they'll get that to you, and you guys can continue this conversation. Really, really good stuff. You guys, any last thoughts before we transition out of here? No? Yes, Pastor Gus.
No, I was just saying, be prayed up, be prayerful in your decision-making process. Have honest conversations with mom and dad or guardian about what you're thinking. And I completely understand how, sometimes we find someone that's attractive and that we get along with really well. But if you open those lines of communication and kind of share your heart on the why is it that this hanging out with this person in such a way or giving them this title is so important. I think you can have healthy conversations about what that looks like, but just be in prayer about every decision that you're making, but one that would, especially to the guys, the heart of a young lady is to be cared for. And so you don't want to go ahead and get into situations like that. So just my 2 thoughts from an old guy, I guess.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, you guys, keep the conversation going for sure in your groups as well. And among yourselves, right? You guys are in contact with each other all throughout the week. So continue this conversation. And remember, in all that we do it all for the glory of God, right? And so let's make that kind of our priority as we go about our lives, even under quarantine. All that we do it for the glory of God. We want to have some fun with you guys and play a game. And so, Pastor Gus.
Hopefully I won't mess up this time. I'm just going to ask the question.
You are the fun Gus among us, and we are going to pass it off to you and let you lead us in the game, my man.
All right. So I am going to be asking you some questions about the basic plot of a movie, which are written really badly, and you're going to have to try to figure out the movie that we're describing. Does that make sense?
So are the students are guessing the movie?
The students will be guessing, and you guys can kind of see if you can help them out if you know some of them. And I think there's a prize for this as well.
Okay.
Make sense? Okay. All right. Here we go. Skinny kid takes steroids and fights Nazis with a frisbee.
It's a Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Wait, no, I can't.
That's a good guess. That's a good
That's
guess.
exactly what it sounds like.
Titanic, somebody says.
The Titanic. All right. All right.
There we go.
There we go. That's a good one. All right, here we go.
Guys, stories related to chocolate.
Chocolate.
I mean, I feel like the obvious one, right? Willy Wonka.
Willy
Gotta be it,
Wonka.
right? That's got to be it. I'm telling you.
Could be.
Oh, Ben Dries.
Oh, Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump.
Oh.
Because life is like.
I've never
Box
seen
of chocolates.
All right, here we
You've
go.
never seen Forrest Gump?
Famous line in the world.
Man.
Farmer has to save Earth, but ends up in a different dimension.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Chicken Little.
In a different dimension.
A farmer.
Wizard of Oz.
A farmer.
Oh, that's a good one.
Farmer.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, Interstellar.
That's a long movie.
That's not fair.
All right.
I never saw that.
Matt
A
Comer
dude
himself,
teams up with a bunch of
Elijah?
the same dude to fight a big fat bald dude.
Oh.
Oh, I think I know this one.
This could be
Avengers.
every movie ever.
I'm pretty sure this is my son's favorite movie, but I could be
Spider-Man.
wrong.
Avengers.
I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
it's Into the Spider-Verse. Yes.
Oh!
How did
Yes.
you know that?
Because we watch the movie all the time. My son is in love with that movie. It's crazy.
All right, local law enforcement dealing with high-tech new replacement.
I don't know that
I
one.
have
That's
no
Transformers.
idea.
No, I can't be right.
Man.
Oh, man. That's a good one.
That's so
Wow,
clever.
that's a good one.
That's a clever.
I would
clever
not
call.
have thought of that.
Wow.
Man uses insects to break into.
Oh, this is Ant-Man.
Bugs
Yeah,
Life.
that's what I'm thinking.
No.
Look at that, Jus.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
Okay, here we go. Everything in this movie would be annoying to step on.
The Lego movie.
Lego movie.
That's my guy.
Gotta be. Yeah.
Man, that was good.
Boom. Love my
Kid
Legos.
beats up his girlfriend's dad to save the world.
Ah.
The new Spider-Man. Spider-Man, what's that?
Oh, Homecoming.
Homecoming. Yeah.
Look at that. You guys are getting good at
Wow.
this.
My wife and I just watched the last one.
Spider-Man movies.
Kid uses an
Yeah.
inflatable toy to avenge his brother's death.
I know this. I'm going to give it a second.
Oh, man.
Inflatable toy?
I think I know this.
To avenge his brother.
Big Hero 6.
Oh.
Oh, yes,
That
yeah.
was good.
That was a good one.
Jolie
I
K
love that
got
movie.
it.
It's a great
Alright.
movie.
I think this is the last one, guys.
Right.
Hairy man kidnaps a kid and enrolls him in a school of fairy tales.
Oh, I know this one.
Of course you would know this one.
Harry Potter.
This one's Harry Potter.
But which one? Which one? Let's see, James. Come
Oh
on.
my God.
The first one, Sorcerer's Stone.
Was that the first one? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Man, that was good. That was
Nice.
That was
good.
good.
There we go.
Oh, wait, we got a bonus one. Do you guys want to do the bonus
Yeah,
one?
let's do it.
Of course. Always do the bonus one.
Two workers
workers.
make a mistake that induces worldwide terror but ends up solving its problems.
I got this one.
Let's see what the comments say. Yeah, look at these guys. They're doing well.
I'm guessing Mike Wazowski. And
Monster.
That's what I'm saying.
Got it.
Monster.
Dang, yeah. That's good.
Yes.
Job.
Oh,
Very
man,
nice,
good
very
times.
nice.
Good times.
That's awesome.
All right,
That's
guys.
good.
Hey, we love having fun with you. You're going to tune back in next week. We got the names of everybody who guessed these movies correct first. We're going to put your name on the spinner of names, and you have to check in next week to see if you won. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight. If you were new with us, I meant to say this at the very beginning, but there is a link in the description for you to fill out a connection card so we can get you connected to a small group. So if you're tuning in from somewhere around Christ Community Church or not, we'd love to get you plugged into a community group. That could be kind of fun. And so let us know. Fill that out in the description. Also subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. And you're going to want to follow us on social media because we've got some fun announcements coming out about next Wednesday night. We're doing a reach week next week. And so we're going to be having a lot of fun. I'm not going to give anything away. I'm not going to give anything away except this. You're going to want to invite your friends to tune into Genesis Mosaic Live next week. We got a lot of fun stuff. And so it's going to be awesome. So follow us on social media for some updates about that. We're also sending out email updates as well. And so it's going to be rocking. We're going to see you guys next week at 6:30 for Reach Week. We love you all. Thanks for tuning in. Have yourself an awesome night.
Shout out to Caden from Chick-fil-A. I see you, baby.
There you go.
Yeah.
Caden, if you're
Bye,
delivering,
guys.
I live in Sycamore. Bring Chick-fil-A out this way.
Caden's the man.